pennies in a stream, falling leaves, a sycamore, moonlight in Vermont, icy finger waves, ski trails on a mountainside, snow light in Vermont.
What does the average American know about Vermont? We know it's got flannels, maple syrup, dairy, and hippies. And we know those last two give us Ben and Jerry's. But is that all Vermont has to offer? I actually think that's a pretty good resume. But I wanted to find out more about this strange corner of the country. And after traveling hundreds of miles all over this great state of Vermont, I have a lot to report. Because it turns out Vermont isn't just for hippies. People live here too. And it's not only maple trees, they got other trees as well. This land is a completely alien landscape, to me at least. It's where I met my very first French Canadian. Now that discovery alone would have made my entire trip worth it. But it certainly didn't hurt that Vermont is one of the most beautiful corners of the world I have ever had the pleasure of visiting. Now, one of the reasons Vermont is so pretty is because it has mountains. In fact, it's got a lot of mountains. So many that people from Vermont refer to the rest of us as Flatlanders. Now, not to change the tone, but I think that is a myopic misnomer that fails to consider those of us from places like the West Coast. My state has the tallest mountain in the lower 48, and you're gonna call me a Flatlander? Get out of town. I'm standing here near the summit of Mount Mansfield, here in the great state of Vermont. Vermont is a French name that means green mountain. As you can see, I'm here in the fall. And these rolling hills and mountains turn this lovely orange amber haze. Vermont's not known as a mountainous state, not really. There's Colorado, Montana, California even, Washington State, Alaska, of course. But these rolling hills and mountains are some of the most extreme and beautiful sights I've ever seen. Folks, I love being here in this great state of Vermont. Mount Mansfield is the tallest mountain in the state of Vermont with an elevation of 4,393 feet. And upon its summit lie vestiges of the last ice age. An alpine tundra biome that used to cover the entirety of the state, now with modern climate and warmer temperatures, retreated to its highest and most extreme points. But before the state was covered entirely in tundra, the state was covered entirely in ice. Vermont sat underneath a mile-thick glacier that submerged even the highest points of Mount Mansfield. On a more personal note, Mount Mansfield was the first Appalachian mountain I'd ever summited, and so going into it, I didn't know what to expect. And well, it turns out that it's cold and windy, like any other mountain would be in the fall. So, the Appalachian Mountains are real mountains. I don't know if it's something in the name that should have told me that earlier, but I guess it took this hike to learn that fact. That's all to say, this hike was definitely worth it, and if you're ever in upstate Vermont, do it. But it's not just the mountains of Vermont that make it a gorgeous state, as evidenced in the next leg of our journey a few miles west. Lake Champlain. Lake Champlain protects Vermont from upstate New York, and on its eastern shores you can find Vermont's largest city, Burlington. From the lake you could sail to New York City or Montreal, and because of its connection with Canada and the St. Lawrence River, Lake Champlain has been the site of several naval and army battles in the Revolution as well as the War of 1812. Wow. I'm here on the eastern shores of Lake Champlain, here in the state of Vermont. It's a cool lake. It's not a great lake. Doesn't diminish it anything, but apparently it was for like 3 weeks or so in 1998. Something about federal funding. It was declared that. I mean, thank goodness it's not. I mean, that's insane. I mean, nothing against this lake, but you know, a great lake is just a ridiculous natural marvel, and such an extreme. That's why we just call it Great Lake, one of those Great Lakes. That's insane. Anyways, Lake Champlain, it's a cool lake. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's not great. Now, the last thing I want to do is deride Lake Champlain. It's a huge, gorgeous, gorgeous lake. In fact, it used to be a sea. Ancient whale bones have been found in the lake, and Lake Champlain even has its own Loch Ness Monster-esque folklore creature, fittingly called Champ or Champy. I'm pulled over on the side of the road here in the state of Vermont because I keep on rubbernecking. I don't know if anyone's ever said that Vermont's a pretty state, but Vermont is a pretty state. I cut that clip off because I was rambling. Admittedly, I just felt the urge to put more footage from back when I was in the field. But now that I'm sitting at my computer, I'm afforded the luxury of reorganizing my thoughts. And to start, I want to say that although the state inherits a beautiful landscape, a big part of what makes Vermont such a gorgeous state is the culture. And of course, the people. People here care, man. There's such a strong sense of pastoral pride here in Vermont. And the people put a lot of this pride and work into their homes, towns, and communities. While driving, I was constantly seeing people repainting their house and restoring their property. Now that sounds like everywhere in the world, but believe me, not to the degree it is here in Vermont. The state seems to embody that old Puritan work ethic. So much of the state is old and built by hand. The town centers are so pretty and idyllic, and obviously the work of those skilled Vermont craftsmen. And these great Vermonters are the reason why the state is covered with over 100 of those iconic covered bridges. It's all very bucolic and serves to make Vermont a setting that is just nearly priceless. I'm here in the state of Vermont, in the only national park here. It's an old Rockefeller state, and it begs the question, you know, if you have family that has all the money in the world, what do you do with it? You go to Vermont. Marsh Billings Rockefeller National Historical Park is Vermont's only national park. Yes, that's actually the name of it, and it's more than just a house. There's also this. But more than that, the park is home to one of our earliest examples of environmentally conscious land stewardship. The park was the childhood property of one of America's earliest environmental thinkers, George Perkins Marsh, who inspired the future owners of the property, the Billings and the Rockefeller families, to practice forest management. Now that's all well and good, and the property is pretty, and it's cool to see the estate and imagine what it must have been like back in the Gilded Age. But I will say it's a strong testament to how great Vermont is that you can find this beauty all over the state. You can't talk about Vermont without talking about maple syrup. Over half of all maple syrup made in the US is made in Vermont. This year, the state sugar makers produced over 3 million gallons of the stuff. What was originally a native practice is being done today recreationally in homes all over New England, as well as commercially, in these aptly named sugar houses and sugar shacks. Okay, Vermont, maple syrup. I was able to get one of these shooters. What's the verdict? Let's crack it open.
That's really good. That's really good. Damn. Vermont. Maple syrup. That's really good. Wow. All right.
Maple syrup is ambrosia, and thank God for those sugar makers for making it. But it's not the only thing from the land that Vermonters can tap into. In my experience, people from New England have a deep appreciation for the outdoors, one that doesn't only pertain to national and state parks, but rather to everywhere that nature can be seen. I suppose that shouldn't be surprising. Every tree you see erupts into fiery colors each fall, and you can expect each winter to bring about a white Christmas. It's easy to fall in love with nature when you experience these testaments to its sublimity in your own backyard. But this appreciation for nature isn't new. New Englanders can credit much of their outlook on a rich heritage of romanticism surrounding the great outdoors. I'm currently parked out here in Vermont in front of a famous poet's house that he used to live at. It's Robert Frost. I brought a book along with me on this New England trip. This Robert Frost collection of poems. I thought, who else better to romanticize about New England, especially in the fall. And truth be told, he lived all over New England. Not just this house in Vermont. He lived in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, but he wrote this very famous poem while I lived here. And I'd like to read it all for you. Stopping by woods on snowy evening. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. To give his harness bells a shake, to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. I like that poem. I don't know if anyone else has ever said this about this Robert Frost guy, but he's a pretty good writer. Anyways, I love Vermont, and I love Robert Frost.
Moonlight in
This is footage of me leaving Vermont through what they call the Northeast Kingdom, the most rural part of an already rural state. I remember this drive. I remember this drive helping to crystallize the idea that the countryside of Vermont offers more than just scenic views, but it directly helps to foster a culture with a great collective natural appreciation. It's responsible for a culture with great homegrown food, and the rural countryside has also helped to nurture a population that is both independent but also generous and close-knit within their communities. I hope you all trust that I'm not bloviating. I wouldn't dare. For good and for bad, I'm being honest. I think mostly good though. But the fact is that these attributes make Vermont and Vermonters stand out from many other states. And although I hesitate to feed their obvious pride in their state, it's a fact I gotta acknowledge that the rest of us are all very blessed to have Vermont with us in this union of 50 states.